The guests said it was the wedding of the year. Crystal chandeliers. Silk-covered chairs. A groom from a respected family. And a bride worth more than the entire guest list combined. But no one knew the woman wiping fingerprints off the champagne glasses, the one refilling water quietly, the maid nobody looked at twice, was the bride. And before the night ended, before the vows, before the rings, she would discover a truth so painful it would change 3 lives forever. Stay with this story because what she heard that night was never meant for her ears. Who was she really? Why would a billionaire woman, powerful, educated, admired, choose to hide in plain sight on the most important day of her life? What did she fear? And what did she suspect about the man waiting at the altar? Tonight, you'll witness a wedding that turned into a test. A test of love. Of loyalty. Of character. And by the end, you'll ask yourself one question. Would you still marry someone after learning who they really are? Her name was Elena Whitmore. By 38, she owned tech companies, real estate across 3 states, and foundations that funded hospitals. She had started from almost nothing. A scholarship student who coded her first app in a college dorm room. That app became a platform. That platform became an empire. By 25, she was a millionaire. By 30, a multimillionaire. By 35, her net worth crossed into the billions. Forbes featured her. Time magazine called her a visionary. She sat on boards. She spoke at conferences. She changed industries. But wealth had come with a cost she never anticipated. She had learned one truth early, and it was a painful one. People loved her money before they loved her. It started small. College friends who disappeared after graduation suddenly reappeared when her first company went public. They needed investments. They needed loans. They needed connections. A roommate she had helped through difficult times asked for $100,000 like it was pocket change. When Elena hesitated, the friendship ended. Then there were the romantic relationships. She dated a professor who seemed kind and intellectual. 3 months in, he pitched her a business idea and asked for funding. When she declined, he became distant. Cold. Eventually, he left. She dated an artist who said he loved her spirit, her energy. But his conversations always returned to her resources. Her ability to fund galleries. To introduce him to collectors. To make his career happen. Even her own distant relatives, people she barely knew, came out of nowhere with their hands extended. A cousin needed money for a house. An uncle wanted her to invest in his restaurant. An aunt suggested Elena should pay for her children's college education because family takes care of family. The asks were constant. Relentless. Exhausting. And beneath each request was an unspoken assumption that her money was somehow also theirs. That her success obligated her to fund their dreams. Friends changed when they learned her net worth. Suitors spoke about investments more than feelings. Even charity partners tried to use her name for clout and donations, caring more about the PR boost than the actual cause. So she built walls. High ones. She became selective about who she let in. She stopped mentioning her wealth. She dressed down in public. She avoided certain social circles. She became guarded in a way that felt necessary for survival but lonely in practice. Until she met Daniel. It was at a small dinner party hosted by mutual friends. Nothing extravagant. Just 8 people around a table, talking about books and travel and life. Daniel sat across from her. He was charming but not flashy. Calm. Soft-spoken. Thoughtful in his responses. A financial consultant, but he never once asked about her portfolio or her investments. Instead, he asked about her favorite authors. About places she had traveled. About what made her laugh. He seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, her opinions, her experiences. Not her bank account. They talked for hours that night. When she mentioned she ran a tech company, he didn't probe for details. He didn't ask about revenue or growth projections. He simply said, "That must be challenging and rewarding." And then he asked what she loved most about the work. Their courtship was slow and intentional. Daniel took her to small restaurants, not expensive ones trying to impress her. He brought her books he thought she would enjoy. He remembered details from their conversations. He never asked about her money. Never talked about investments or business opportunities. Never suggested she fund anything. For the first time in years, Elena felt like someone saw her. Not her wealth. Not her influence. Just her. They spent weekends hiking. They cooked meals together. They sat in coffee shops and talked about everything and nothing. He made her laugh. He listened when she was stressed. He seemed content just being with her. After 2 years, he proposed. Not with some elaborate public display, but quietly, during a walk on the beach at sunset. "I want to spend my life with you," he said simply. And she believed him. The wedding planning began. Elena let herself hope. Let herself believe that maybe, finally, she had found someone who loved her for who she was, not what she had. But 3 weeks before the wedding, a small moment shook her foundation. She came home early from a meeting. Daniel was in the study, on the phone. He didn't hear her come in. His voice was tense. Agitated. "I just need the marriage to go through," he said. "After that, everything changes." Elena froze in the hallway. Her heart started pounding. She wanted to believe it was innocent. That she had misheard. That there was context she was missing. When she walked in, Daniel looked up, startled. But he recovered quickly. Smiled. "Hey, you're home early." She asked who he was talking to. "Just a client," he said smoothly. "Wedding planning is interfering with some business timelines. Nothing to worry about." He kissed her forehead. Changed the subject. And she wanted to believe him. But the sentence stayed with her. "I just need the marriage to go through. After that, everything changes." What changes? Why did the marriage need to go through like a transaction? She couldn't shake it. For 3 weeks, she tried to convince herself she was being paranoid. That her past had made her too suspicious. That Daniel was different. But doubt had planted itself deep. And once doubt takes root, it grows. So Elena made a decision. If he loved her, he would love her without the wealth. If not, she would know before saying, "I do." She would test him in a way he could never anticipate. She would become invisible. And in that invisibility, she would hear the truth. Because people say what they really think when they believe no one important is listening. And a maid, she knew, was someone people rarely saw as important. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The morning of the wedding, Elena woke before dawn. The suite at the venue was filled with flowers. White roses and peonies. Her wedding dress hung by the window, catching the early light. It was beautiful. Custom made. Ivory silk with delicate lace. A dress she had dreamed about. But as she looked at it, all she felt was dread. Mrs. Clara knocked softly and entered with tea. The elderly woman had been with Elena's family for over 20 years. She knew Elena better than almost anyone. "You didn't sleep," Clara said. It wasn't a question. Elena shook her head. "I keep hearing his voice. After that, everything changes. What if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life?" Clara sat beside her. "Then we find out today. Before it's too late." Elena had confided everything to Clara. The overheard phone call. Her fears. Her plan. Clara had tried to talk her out of it at first. "You're risking public humiliation," she warned. But Elena was resolute. "I'd rather be humiliated than trapped in a marriage built on lies." Now, sitting in the morning light, Elena felt her resolve harden. She would go through with it. She had to know. The wedding venue buzzed with elegance downstairs. Caterers moved efficiently through the kitchen. Florists made final adjustments. Musicians tuned instruments. Everything was perfect. Everything was ready. But in her suite, Elena was preparing for something entirely different. She opened a small bag Clara had brought. Inside was a maid's uniform. Simple. Black dress. White apron. Sensible shoes. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she began to undress. She removed her silk robe. Took off the delicate jewelry she had planned to wear. She pulled her hair back into a tight, low bun. No makeup. No elegance. Just plain. Forgettable. Invisible. She slipped into the uniform. It fit perfectly. Clara had made sure of it. When Elena looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. And that was exactly the point. "Are you sure, child?" Clara asked one final time. Her voice was gentle but concerned. Elena nodded. "I need to hear the truth without my name attached to it. I need to know if he loves me or if he loves what I can give him." Clara's eyes were sad but understanding. "Then let's find out." They reviewed the plan. Elena would slip into the ballroom as part of the catering staff. Clara had arranged it with the venue manager, someone she trusted. No one else would know. Elena would serve drinks, clear plates, and listen. Just listen. If Daniel was genuine, if this was all in her head, she would reveal herself before the ceremony. They would laugh about it someday. But if her fears were confirmed, she would know before binding herself legally and emotionally to someone who saw her as a transaction. She took a deep breath. Steadied herself. And stepped out of the suite. The service entrance led directly to the kitchen. Staff bustled everywhere, too busy to notice one more person in uniform. Elena picked up a tray. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she forced them steady. She pushed through the swinging doors into the ballroom. The space took her breath away, even now. It was transformed. Thousands of candles. Flowers cascading from every surface. Tables set with crystal and fine china. String lights woven through the ceiling like stars. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, she felt like she was walking into an investigation. She moved through the room quietly. Guests were beginning to arrive. She recognized faces. Business associates. Daniel's family. Mutual friends. People she had laughed with. Dined with. And not one of them looked at her. She was invisible. Just another member of the staff. It was exactly what she needed, but it stung nonetheless. She stationed herself near the bar, refilling water glasses, clearing empty champagne flutes. People snapped fingers at her when they wanted something. Didn't say please or thank you. Didn't make eye contact. She was furniture. A tool. Nothing more. And then she saw him. Daniel. He stood near the far end of the bar with two men. She recognized them. Work colleagues of his. They were laughing loudly, drinks in hand. Daniel looked relaxed. Happy. Confident. He checked his watch, smiled at something one of the men said. Elena's heart was pounding so hard she thought people might hear it. She picked up a small tray of empty glasses from a nearby table and moved closer. Slowly. Casually. Just another worker doing her job. She positioned herself at the table directly behind them. Close enough to hear. They didn't even glance her way. And then one of the men, a loud guy named Marcus, raised his glass and said, "So how does it feel, my friend? Marrying a billionaire?" The words hung in the air. Elena froze. The tray in her hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Daniel smirked. Actually smirked. And Elena felt something inside her begin to crack. She kept her head down, arranging the glasses on her tray with trembling fingers. She needed to hear his response. Needed to know what he would say when he thought she couldn't hear. Marcus laughed again. I mean, you must be counting down the days, right? That kind of money, man. You're set for life. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, whiskey probably, and took a slow sip. He looked completely at ease. Completely in control. Let's just say, he said, his voice smooth and confident, my future is looking very secure. The words landed like stones in her stomach. Not, I love her. Not, she's amazing. Not even a deflection. Just, my future is looking very secure. Elena felt like she couldn't breathe. She had hoped, prayed even, that this test would prove her wrong. That Daniel would defend her. That he would say something, anything, that showed he loved her for who she was, not what she had. But instead, he was confirming her worst fear. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with, I'm still here. Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. Marcus clapped Daniel on the shoulder. Secure is an understatement. What's she worth now? 3 billion. 4. Daniel didn't correct him. Didn't deflect. He just smiled that same confident smile. Something like that. The third man, quieter until now, leaned in. His name was Jason. Elena had met him once at a work dinner. So what's the plan? You gonna keep working or just live the good life? Daniel took another sip. 2 more years, I move assets. After that, I'm free. Elena's hands went completely still. Move assets. Her assets. Money she had earned. Companies she had built. He was already planning how to take them. How to position himself. How to secure his share. Her throat felt tight. She wanted to scream. To flip the table. To demand he explain himself right now. But she didn't move. Didn't make a sound. Because she needed to hear all of it. Every word. Every plan. Every lie. Marcus looked confused. Free from what? You're marrying a gorgeous, brilliant woman who happens to be loaded. That's not exactly prison, man. Daniel's expression shifted slightly. Something colder came into his eyes. Free from pretending. The word hung there. Pretending. 3 weeks of doubts crystallized into certainty in that single word. Jason raised an eyebrow. Pretending what? Daniel glanced around, checking to see if anyone was listening. His eyes passed right over Elena. She was invisible. Just a maid. No one important. He lowered his voice slightly, but not enough. She heard every syllable. Pretending to be interested in her foundation work. Pretending to care about her tech projects. Pretending that her success is fascinating. He paused. It's exhausting, honestly. I'll be glad when I don't have to fake it anymore. Elena felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. She had given this man 2 years of her life. She had trusted him. Believed in him. Imagined a future with him. And he thought being interested in her work was exhausting. He thought her success was something to endure, not celebrate. Marcus laughed, but it sounded uncomfortable. That's cold, man. Daniel shrugged. It's honest. Look, she's fine. She's smart. But let's be real. This is a business arrangement that works for both of us. She gets a husband who looks good in photos and makes her seem normal. I get financial security for life. It's mutually beneficial. A business arrangement. That's what their relationship was to him. That's what she was. A transaction. A means to an end. Elena gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. The room felt like it was tilting. Every promise he had made echoed in her mind now, reframed by this truth. Every, I love you, had been a lie. Every romantic gesture had been strategy. Every moment of seeming intimacy had been performance. Jason shifted uncomfortably. What about the wife, though? I mean, what happens when she figures it out? Daniel's smile didn't waver. She won't. And even if she does, she'll be taken care of. I'm not a monster. She'll get a trust fund. A house. Whatever she needs. She'll never want for anything. Except honesty, Elena thought. Except real love. Except a partner who actually valued her. Marcus pressed on. But what if she contests it? What if she fights back? Daniel waved a hand dismissively. Prenup is already handled. My lawyer made sure of that. Everything is protected. She'll get her share, I'll get mine, and if things ever go south, we both walk away clean. Well, I walk away very well taken care of. The casualness of it was what hurt most. He had planned this. Strategized it. Protected himself legally while pretending to love her. While looking into her eyes and promising forever. While planning a wedding that was never supposed to be about love at all. Then Marcus asked the question that shattered what little remained of Elena's heart. And the other woman? What about Vanessa? Elena's world stopped. The glasses on her tray clinked slightly as her hands trembled. Vanessa. There was another woman. Of course there was. Why would someone plotting to marry for money limit himself to just one deception? Daniel's smile changed. It became something else. Something warmer but also more disturbing. Because this smile was real. She's waiting. 2 words. Simple. Devastating. She knows the deal. 2 years of marriage, secure the assets, then we're together for real. She's been patient. It won't be much longer. Marcus whistled low. That's some long game, man. Worth it, Daniel said simply. Vanessa and I have been together for 3 years. We know what we're doing. This is just a necessary step. 3 years. Elena did the math quickly. He had been with Vanessa before he even met Elena. Their entire relationship had been a lie from the very first conversation. That dinner party where they met. Those early dates that felt so genuine. The proposal on the beach. All of it had been planned. All of it had been strategy. He was with someone else. He loved someone else. And Elena was just the wealthy fool standing between him and his real life. Jason looked genuinely troubled now. I don't know, man. This feels wrong. She seems like a good person. Daniel's expression hardened. She's rich. She'll be fine. Rich people always are. Besides, she's so desperate to be loved for who she is instead of her money that she doesn't see what's right in front of her. It's almost too easy. The cruelty of it took her breath away. He had identified her vulnerability, her deepest fear, and weaponized it. He had pretended to be exactly what she needed, knowing it would make her blind to what he really was. She wanted to scream. To throw the tray across the room. To demand answers in front of everyone. To expose him right here, right now. But she didn't. Because truth, once revealed, cannot be unseen. And she needed to see all of it. She needed to know exactly who this man was before she made her next move. She needed to hear if there was more. If there were other layers to this betrayal. She stood there, invisible in her uniform, listening to the man she was supposed to marry in less than an hour discuss her like she was a business deal. Like she was a problem to be managed. Like she was nothing more than a stepping stone to his real life with his real love. And in that moment, standing in a ballroom surrounded by flowers and candles and the trappings of a fairy tale, Elena felt something shift inside her. The hurt was there. The betrayal was crushing. But underneath it, something else was growing. Clarity. Cold, hard clarity. And with it, strength. She walked slowly toward the exit, her mind racing, her heart breaking, but her steps steady. She would not fall apart. Not here. Not in front of these people. Not until she had decided exactly what to do next. Mrs. Clara was waiting in the hallway outside the ballroom. One look at Elena's face and she knew. "Oh, child," Clara whispered. Elena's voice was steady, but her eyes were wet with unshed tears. "It's worse than we feared. He has someone else. Vanessa. They've been together for 3 years. This whole thing, our entire relationship, it's all been a lie. He's marrying me for money and planning to leave in 2 years after he secures his share." Clara pulled her into a hug. Elena let herself lean into it for just a moment. Let herself feel the comfort. But only for a moment. Because she had decisions to make. Big ones. And not much time. Then something unexpected happened. A voice behind them said, "I knew you'd want proof." Elena spun around. Standing there, looking nervous but determined, was Daniel's younger sister, Maya. She was holding her phone. "I heard the conversation," Maya said quietly. "I was standing near the bar. I heard what my brother said about you. About Vanessa. About his plans." Elena stared at her. Maya had always been kind but distant. They had only met a handful of times. "Why are you telling me this?" Maya's eyes were sad. "Because he's my brother, but what he's doing is wrong. And you deserve to know the truth." She held out her phone. "He's been seeing Vanessa for months. Years, actually, based on what he just said. I've seen the messages when he left his phone out. I've heard phone calls. I tried to convince myself it was none of my business. That maybe I was misunderstanding. But I wasn't." She pulled up a series of text messages. Screenshots she had taken. Elena's hands shook as she scrolled through them. The messages were clear. Explicit. Daniel and Vanessa planning their future. Discussing the wedding like it was a hurdle to overcome. Counting down the days. Talking about trips they would take once this was over. Once he had secured Elena's money. There were photos too. Daniel and Vanessa together. At restaurants. At her apartment. Kissing. Happy. Real. Everything he had never been with Elena. "I tried to warn you," Maya said. "I called you 2 weeks ago, but you were traveling and I lost my nerve. I thought maybe if you saw it yourself, if you heard it yourself, you'd believe it. Because if I just told you, he would have denied everything. He's good at that. He's been lying our whole lives." Elena looked at this young woman who had risked family loyalty to tell her the truth. Who had gathered evidence knowing it might destroy her relationship with her brother. "Thank you," Elena whispered. Maya nodded. "You deserve better than this. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are." Elena stood there in the hallway, still in her maid's uniform, holding a phone full of evidence of her fiancé's betrayal. Mrs. Clara was on one side. Maya on the other. And she had a choice to make. She could walk away quietly. Cancel the wedding. Disappear. Protect herself from public humiliation. Or she could do something else. Something that would send a message not just to Daniel, but to every person who had ever underestimated her. Who had ever seen her as just a bank account. Who had ever thought they could use her and get away with it. She had come here tonight hoping to be wrong. Praying that Daniel would prove her fears unfounded. That he would defend her to his friends. That he would show, even in her absence, that he loved her. But now she had clarity. Painful, devastating clarity. And clarity, she realized, was a kind of power. She looked at Maya. "Can you send me those screenshots?" Maya nodded and quickly forwarded them. Elena's phone buzzed with incoming messages. Evidence. Truth. Ammunition. "What are you going to do?" Clara asked carefully. Elena took a deep breath. The hurt was still there. It would be there for a long time. But underneath it was something stronger. Something unbreakable. "I'm going to give Daniel exactly what he wants," she said quietly. "A wedding he'll never forget." She walked back into the ballroom. The music was swelling now. Guests were being directed to their seats. The ceremony was about to begin. The officiant stood at the altar, adjusting his notes, looking calm and professional. Daniel stood near the front with his best man, straightening his tie, checking his watch. He looked calm. Confident. Like a man about to win. Like someone who thought he had played the game perfectly. Elena moved through the crowd in her maid's uniform, clearing a few more glasses, positioning herself near the back. No one looked at her. No one saw her. She was invisible. And she used that invisibility to observe. To see everything. To prepare for what came next. The officiant raised his hands. The room quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the bride. Everyone stood. The energy in the room shifted. Anticipation. Excitement. Everyone turned toward the grand doors at the back of the hall where Elena was supposed to make her entrance in her custom gown. The orchestra began the wedding march. The doors opened. And instead of silk and diamonds, instead of the radiant billionaire heiress they expected, a maid walked down the aisle. Just a simple woman in a black dress and white apron. Carrying nothing. Looking at no one. Just walking steadily toward the altar. For a moment, there was confused silence. Then gasps began. Whispers spread like wildfire. Where's the bride? What's happening? Is this part of the ceremony? Elena kept walking. Slow. Steady. Deliberate. Her eyes were locked on Daniel. And as she got closer, she saw his face change. Confusion. Then recognition. Then absolute terror. His face went pale. His eyes widened. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His best man leaned over and whispered something, but Daniel didn't respond. He was frozen, staring at Elena as she approached. The guests' confusion turned to shock as they realized what they were seeing. Some recognized her despite the disguise. Others were still trying to understand. But everyone was watching now. Every eye in the room was on the maid walking down the aisle toward the groom who looked like he might pass out. When Elena reached the altar, she stopped. The room was completely silent now. You could hear the chandelier crystals swaying gently overhead. You could hear someone's uncomfortable cough from the third row. You could hear Daniel's rapid breathing. Elena stood there for a long moment, letting the tension build. Letting everyone wonder. Letting Daniel squirm. Then, slowly, deliberately, she reached down and untied the white apron. She let it fall to the ground. Underneath was the wedding gown. She had been wearing it all along, hidden under the maid's uniform. Elegant. Simple. Beautiful. Ivory silk catching the light. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. Elena reached up and pulled the pins from her hair. It fell around her shoulders. She met Daniel's eyes. He was shaking now. Visibly shaking. I wanted to meet the man I was marrying, Elena said. Her voice was calm. Clear. Strong. It carried through the room with perfect clarity. Not the one who wanted my bank account. Daniel's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Elena, what are you? I don't understand, this is crazy. She turned to face the guests. Hundreds of faces staring at her. Some confused. Some starting to understand. Tonight was never a wedding, she said simply. It was a lesson. She looked back at Daniel. His face was red now. Panicked. A lesson in who people become when they think no one important is watching. Daniel tried to recover. Tried to take control. This is insane. You're embarrassing yourself. Whatever you think you heard or saw, you're wrong. Am I? Elena asked calmly. She gestured to the bar area where Marcus and Jason still stood, looking like they wanted to disappear. Should we ask your friends what we discussed earlier? About moving my assets? About pretending? About being free in 2 years? The room exploded in whispers. Daniel's face went from red to white. I don't know what you're talking about. No. Elena pulled out her phone. Should I read the text messages? The ones between you and Vanessa? His eyes went wide. Pure panic now. How did you? Your sister cares more about the truth than family loyalty, Elena said simply. She looked at Maya, who stood in the crowd looking both terrified and proud. Unlike you. Daniel was scrambling now. Those messages are private. You have no right, I have every right to know who I'm marrying, Elena cut him off. Or rather, who I'm not marrying. She turned to face the guests again. 3 weeks ago, I overheard a phone call. My fiancé said he just needed the marriage to go through. That after that, everything would change. It made me wonder. Made me doubt. So I decided to test him. She gestured to her discarded maid's uniform on the floor. I dressed as service staff today. Invisible. Unimportant. And I listened to what my fiancé really thinks of me when he doesn't know I'm in the room. The guests were completely silent now. Hanging on every word. He called our relationship pretending. He has another woman, Vanessa, who he's been with for 3 years. Our entire relationship has been a strategic move to access my wealth. He planned to stay married for 2 years, move assets, and then leave. His lawyer already has the prenup structure to make sure he gets his share. You could hear a pin drop. People were staring at Daniel now. His mother stood up, her face a mixture of shock and fury. Daniel. Is this true? He said nothing. His jaw worked, but no words came out. His silence was the loudest answer he could have given. Maya stepped forward from the crowd. Her voice shook slightly, but it was clear. It's true. I've seen the messages. The plans. The other woman's name is Vanessa Miller. She works at his firm. They've been together for 3 years. She held up her phone. I have screenshots. Dozens of them. Planning their future together. Talking about this wedding like it was a business transaction. The room exploded in noise. Gasps. Accusations. Daniel's mother was yelling at him in Italian. Marcus and Jason were trying to slip out a side door. Friends were demanding answers. Through it all, Elena stood calm. Still. Centered. Daniel finally found his voice. You manipulative witch. You set me up. This whole thing was a trap. Elena smiled. It was not a nice smile. No, Daniel. I gave you every opportunity to be honest. To be genuine. To actually love me. You failed. Spectacularly. His best man put a hand on his shoulder, trying to lead him away, but Daniel shook it off. You're going to regret this. I'll sue you. I'll destroy you. With what? Elena asked calmly. You have nothing. No claim. No rights. And now, no credibility. She turned to the officiant, who looked absolutely shell-shocked. There will be no wedding today. Then she addressed the room again. Her voice softened slightly. Became almost friendly. But please, stay. Eat. Drink. Dance. This food is already paid for. The band is here. Let's not waste a good party. Some guests laughed nervously. Others started clapping. A few were crying. Elena's business mentor, an older woman in the third row, stood and started a slow clap that built through the room. Daniel stood there, exposed and humiliated, as the room erupted in applause. Not for him. For her. His mother walked up to him and slapped him across the face. Hard. You disgrace this family, she hissed. Then she turned to Elena. I am so sorry. I did not raise him to be this. Elena nodded. I know. This isn't your fault. Daniel's father appeared and grabbed him by the arm. We're leaving. Now. Daniel was dragged toward a side exit, his face buried in his hands, his best man trailing behind looking mortified. The last Elena saw of him was his back disappearing through a door, his parents on either side of him, and the weight of his choices crushing down on his shoulders. As the door closed behind Daniel, something shifted in the room. The tension broke. Conversations erupted. Some people were laughing in disbelief. Others were hugging Elena. A few were still processing what they had just witnessed. Elena stood at the altar alone, surrounded by flowers and candles and the remnants of what was supposed to be her wedding. And for the first time in weeks, she felt free. Genuinely, completely free. The reception continued. The band, after a moment of confusion, started playing upbeat jazz. People gravitated toward the bar. The catering staff, who had watched the whole thing in stunned silence, began serving food. And slowly, remarkably, the event transformed from a failed wedding into something else entirely. A celebration. Not of marriage, but of truth. Of courage. Of self-respect. People came up to Elena in waves. Some to apologize for not seeing what was happening. Some to congratulate her courage. Some simply to hug her and tell her she was incredible. Her business mentor, Patricia, pulled her aside. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen," she said. "And I've seen you face down boardrooms and hostile investors. But this? This took a different kind of strength." Elena smiled, and for the first time all day, it was genuine. "I couldn't marry someone who saw me as a transaction." Patricia nodded. "You just taught everyone in this room a lesson about self-worth. About knowing when to walk away. About choosing dignity over comfort." Mrs. Clara appeared with a glass of champagne. "You did the right thing, child." Elena took the glass and looked at the elderly woman who had supported her through everything. "I know. It hurts. But I know." In the days that followed, the story spread. It was impossible to contain. Too many people had witnessed it. Social media exploded with speculation and commentary. Some people criticized Elena for the public humiliation. Said she should have handled it privately. But far more people celebrated her. Women especially. They shared their own stories of being used. Of being valued for what they had rather than who they were. Of choosing themselves when it would have been easier to stay. Elena stayed off social media mostly. She needed space to process. To grieve. Because even though Daniel had betrayed her, she had still lost something. She had lost the future she had imagined. The partnership she had hoped for. The love she had wanted to believe in. She let herself feel that loss. Didn't rush past it or minimize it. Just sat with it and let it hurt. But in the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Maya reached out. Apologized for her brother. Asked if they could talk. They met for coffee. And in that conversation, a real friendship began to form. Maya was ashamed of her family. Disgusted by what her brother had done. "I always knew he was selfish," she admitted. "But I didn't know he was cruel." Elena appreciated her honesty. Over the following weeks, they talked more. About family. About expectations. About the weight of other people's choices. Maya was a social worker. She worked with women leaving abusive situations. Women rebuilding their lives from nothing. "They're the strongest people I know," Maya said one afternoon. "They lose everything and still find a way to stand back up." That conversation planted a seed. 2 months after the cancelled wedding, Elena called Maya. "I want to do something," she said. "Something that matters. I've been thinking about those women you work with. The ones rebuilding their lives." Maya leaned forward. "What did you have in mind?" "A program," Elena said. "Business mentorship for single mothers. Women who have been underestimated. Women who have been used. Women who need a second chance. Fund it properly. Not as charity, but as investment. Help them build real careers. Real independence. Real power." Maya's eyes lit up. "That would be incredible. I want you to run it with me, Elena said. You know these women. You understand their struggles. Together, we could build something that actually changes lives. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. My brother tried to take from you. Let's build something that gives instead. They launched the program 3 months later. Started small. 10 women in the first cohort. Single mothers who had left bad situations. Who were working multiple jobs. Who had dreams but no resources. Who needed someone to believe in them. Elena provided funding. Business training. Mentorship. Connections. But more than that, she provided belief. She looked these women in the eyes and told them they were capable. That their past didn't define their future. That they deserved success. The program grew quickly. The first cohort graduated and started businesses. Childcare services. Catering companies. Consulting firms. Cleaning services that grew into facilities management companies. Each success story fueled the next. More women applied. More funding became available. Other businesswomen wanted to help. Within a year, they had served over 100 women. Within 2 years, over 500. And Elena found something she hadn't expected in the wreckage of her failed wedding. Purpose that had nothing to do with wealth. Connection that had nothing to do with status. Meaning that came from lifting others up instead of protecting what she had. She still ran her tech companies. Still sat on boards. Still managed her investments. But the mentorship program became the work that mattered most. Because every woman who graduated, every business that launched, every life that changed, was proof that something good could come from something painful. That betrayal didn't have to be the end of the story. That it could be, instead, a turning point. One afternoon, almost 6 months after the cancelled wedding, Elena received a letter. Hand-delivered to her office. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Daniel. Her assistant asked if she wanted it thrown away. Elena hesitated. Then said, no. I'll read it. She opened it alone in her office. The letter was long. Rambling in places. He apologized. Said he had been foolish. Said he had made terrible choices. Said he missed her. Said he realized too late that what they had was real, at least for him, at least by the end. Said Vanessa had left him when the scandal broke. Said his firm had quietly forced him out. Said his family barely spoke to him. Said he had lost everything and finally understood what he had thrown away. He asked if they could talk. If there was any possibility of forgiveness. Of starting over. Of trying again. Elena read it once. Carefully. Then she placed it in her desk drawer and never opened it again. Not out of bitterness. Not out of revenge. But because some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Some chapters end for a reason. And reopening them doesn't lead to redemption. It leads to repetition. She had tested love and found it wanting. But in the process, she had found something more valuable. Herself. Her strength. Her worth. Her ability to choose dignity over comfort. To choose truth over convenience. To choose herself even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. The mentorship program continued to grow. Maya became not just a business partner but a real friend. The kind of friend who knew the worst parts of your story and stayed anyway. Who celebrated your victories and sat with you in your grief. Who showed up, consistently, without agenda. The kind of friend Elena had always wanted but rarely found. And slowly, over months and then years, the pain of Daniel's betrayal faded. Not completely. Some wounds leave scars. But it stopped being the defining moment of her life and became instead a lesson. A reminder. A story she could tell to the women in her program when they doubted themselves. I stood at the altar, she would say, and chose myself. Chose truth. Chose freedom. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was also the best thing. Because it taught me that my worth isn't determined by who loves me or who wants me or who chooses me. It's determined by who I am. And that's something no one can take away. The women would listen. Some would cry. Some would nod. Some would ask questions. And in those moments, Elena knew that her pain had purpose. That her test had taught her something worth sharing. That her cancelled wedding had become, somehow, a gift. Not to Daniel. Not to the guests who witnessed it. But to herself. And to every woman who would hear the story and realize that walking away is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. So let me ask you something. What would you have done in Elena's place? Would you have exposed Daniel in front of everyone like she did, or would you have stayed silent and called it off privately? Do you think the public confrontation was justified, or did she go too far? Think about it honestly. Imagine standing there in that maid's uniform, hearing the person you trusted most talk about you like you're nothing more than a paycheck. Hearing them discuss another relationship, another future, one that doesn't include you except as a stepping stone. How would you have reacted? Would you have had the strength to stay quiet and listen? Or would you have confronted him immediately? And here's another question. Do you believe people can truly love beyond money? Can wealthy people ever really know if they're loved for who they are or what they have? Is there always going to be that doubt? That question? That fear? Elena built walls because of her experiences. She tested Daniel because she had been hurt before. Were those walls necessary protection or did they create the very problem she feared? Did her wealth doom her relationships or did her inability to trust? What do you think? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. Your stories. Your experiences with trust and betrayal and choosing yourself when it's hard. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that your worth is not tied to what others see in you or want from you, then subscribe. Hit that button. Because we share more stories like this. Real stories. Human stories. Stories of truth and courage and the messy, complicated reality of the human heart. Stories about people who faced impossible choices and found strength they didn't know they had. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that never reach the altar. The ones that end before they begin because someone was brave enough to ask the hard questions. To demand the truth. To choose themselves. Because they teach us the most important lesson of all. That loving yourself, respecting yourself, choosing yourself, that's the foundation of everything else. Every relationship. Every connection. Every future you build. It starts with knowing your worth and refusing to accept anything less than you deserve. Elena lost a husband that day. But she kept her dignity. Her self-respect. Her strength. And in the end, that's wealth no one can steal. That's security no prenup can protect. That's love that doesn't depend on anyone else's choices. So tell me. Where are you watching from? What's your story? And what would you have done? I'll be reading every comment. And I'll see you in the next story.